My husband threw me out, and I was shaking so hard in the cold that I couldn't even feel my own feet. Snow kept falling on my shoulders as I stood there barefoot, holding the tiny blanket that still smelled like my baby. Ryan didn't even look back after slamming the door. He had spent years calling me his support, his partner, the woman who stood by him when he had nothing. But that night, he called me dead weight and told me I was holding him back. Then he pushed me out like I meant nothing. The wind cut through my clothes, and I felt the kind of fear that makes your chest hurt. I kept thinking about all the nights I stayed awake helping him with bills, all the times I believed his promises. And now, I was standing alone on a dark road, shaking so much I could barely breathe. Then I saw headlights. A black SUV slowed beside me, and I stepped back, unsure if I should run or call for help. The window rolled down, and I heard a familiar voice, deep, calm, steady. Cole Harrison, my father's old business partner. I hadn't seen him in years, not since my dad passed. "Elena," he said, sounding shocked. "What are you doing out here like this?" The moment I saw concern in someone's eyes, everything inside me cracked. I couldn't even answer. Cole opened the door and wrapped his coat around me before helping me into the warm SUV. The heat made my skin sting, but for the first time that night, I felt like maybe I wasn't going to freeze. As he drove, I kept my eyes on my hands because I didn't want him to see the way they were trembling. I tried to speak, but only broken words came out. Ryan, cold, thrown out, nowhere to go. Cole didn't push me. He just listened quietly, his jaw tightening a little more with every detail. When I finished, he simply said, "You're safe now. I've got you." He took me to his countryside home, a place full of warm lights and the smell of fresh coffee. Mara, his sister, rushed to me with blankets and gently checked my feet, worried they were frostbitten. I didn't realize how numb I had become until she touched me. Sitting there wrapped in warmth, I finally let myself cry, not just from fear, but from the deep hurt of being betrayed by the person I trusted most. Ryan didn't just throw me out of our home. He threw me out of the life I helped him build. And for what? To feel powerful? To start fresh without the woman who carried him through every failure? But even as the tears fell, something else began to grow inside me. Something steady. Something fierce. I didn't know it yet, but that night wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new one. A story where I would rise quietly and steadily, until the cold that almost broke me became the reason I learned to stand stronger than ever. Cole's countryside home felt calm the moment we stepped inside. The lights were soft, the air warm, and everything smelled faintly of baked bread. Mara, his sister, hurried over as soon as she saw me. She didn't ask questions right away. She simply guided me to a chair, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and placed a bowl of hot soup in front of me. Her kindness made my throat tighten. I wasn't used to people caring without expecting something in return. While I ate slowly, Mara talked about simple things: the weather, the quiet life outside the city, the new plants she was trying to grow. She gave me space without making me feel watched. Cole stayed nearby, keeping the atmosphere steady, offering small comforts like adjusting the heater and making sure the room wasn't too bright. When I finally lay down to rest in their guest room, my mind refused to stay quiet. Every time I closed my eyes, memories surfaced, sharp and clear. I remembered Ryan during our early days, ambitious, hopeful, grateful for the support I gave him. Back then, he used to talk about building a future together. I believed him because he made me feel like we were a team. But things changed when he gained access to the money my father left behind. At first, it was little things. Unexplained withdrawals, sudden business investments he didn't talk to me about. Whenever I questioned him, he brushed me off with smooth excuses. I convinced myself he was stressed, that the pressure was getting to him. But the warmth he used to show me slowly faded. The man who once held my hand now avoided any real conversation. His ambition hardened into something darker. One afternoon, I found financial papers left open on his desk. My name was on documents I had never signed, linked to transfers I didn't know existed. I felt uneasy, but instead of answers, Ryan gave me anger. He accused me of snooping and said I didn't understand business. I believed him again, wanting to save what was left of our relationship. Lying on Mara's guest bed, those moments played back like scenes from a movie I didn't want to watch. I realized that Ryan hadn't just changed. He had been hiding his intentions behind a mask I failed to see through. The truth felt heavier than the blanket covering me. He hadn't pushed me out because he was stressed or overwhelmed. He pushed me out because I had become a threat to the secrets he was hiding. The more I thought about it, the clearer everything became. The man who accused me of being weak was the same man who used my father's legacy without hesitation. He treated my trust like something he could cash out whenever he pleased. As the night stretched on, the confusion I carried slowly shifted into something steadier. I wasn't powerless like he wanted me to believe. I wasn't lost. I was finally seeing him without the illusions that once blinded me. By the time morning light filtered through the curtains, a quiet strength settled inside me. Ryan had taken advantage of my loyalty, but he hadn't taken all of me. I still had my voice, my memories, and now the truth. And with that truth came a new kind of determination, calm, focused, and ready to face whatever came next. Cole noticed the questions in my eyes long before I said anything. The next morning, he brought me a box of old files he had kept after my father passed away. He told me he wasn't sure what I was looking for, but he thought these papers might help me understand things better. I sat at his dining table with a cup of warm tea while he opened folders one by one, laying them out gently, as if they were something fragile. We started going through documents my father had signed years ago, contracts, investment notes, and personal letters. I tried to stay calm, but the more we read, the more something inside me tightened. These weren't just numbers and signatures. They were pieces of the life my father had trusted Ryan to respect. As we flipped through the pages, certain patterns stood out. Dates didn't match. Signatures looked slightly off. Accounts connected to my name had movements I never approved. Cole pointed at one sheet and said, "This isn't your writing. Look at the curve here. It's completely different." He wasn't accusing me. He was helping me see what I had ignored for too long. Once I compared the documents side by side, it became impossible to deny. Ryan had been copying my father's signature, and even mine on forms meant to protect the assets my father left behind. My hands grew cold as I read a contract transferring ownership of a property to someone named Sienna Cross. The name made me pause. Sienna used to be my friend, someone who sat at my kitchen table laughing about small things. I never imagined she would be connected to this. But there it was, her name next to Ryan's, listed as his business partner, receiving benefits from transfers that were meant to stay within my family. The realization hit me hard. This wasn't just carelessness or misunderstanding. This was deliberate. Ryan and Sienna had planned things quietly, taking what wasn't theirs while acting like I was the one who didn't understand anything. It felt like betrayal stacked on betrayal, each layer sharper than the last. Cole stayed quiet, giving me space to process everything. I could feel his concern, but he didn't rush me. When I finally looked up, he said softly, "You have proof now, but using it won't be easy. These kinds of battles take a toll." I knew he was right. Taking action meant stepping into a fight that could drain anyone. But the hurt I felt wasn't the same as before. It wasn't confusion or shock anymore. It was clarity. I wasn't trembling or doubting myself. I felt steady, almost calm, as if something inside me had locked into place. "I'm not letting them walk away with this," I said. My voice didn't shake. "They built this on lies. If they're so confident in their tricks, then I'll let those lies guide me right back to the truth." Cole gave a long breath, watching me closely. "Just remember," he said, "once you choose this path, you can't turn back." "I'm not looking back," I answered. "Not anymore." It wasn't anger pushing me. It was something deeper. The need to reclaim what was taken from me, not only the money but the respect I allowed them to strip away. I finally understood that this wasn't just about loss. It was about standing up for myself in a way I never had before. The following months moved differently, almost like time had slowed down just enough for me to breathe again. Cole offered me a position at his lakeside lodge, not out of pity, but because he believed I could handle the work. I accepted, wanting something stable that didn't tie me to my past. The lodge sat beside calm water, surrounded by tall pines that swayed gently in the wind. Being there felt like stepping into a place where I could start fresh without noise or judgment. I began learning how the lodge operated from the inside, how reservations were handled, how budgets were planned, and how staff schedules were organized. At first, I worried I would make mistakes, but the more I worked, the more I realized I understood far more than Ryan ever implied. Tasks that he once claimed were too complex became manageable when I separated his criticism from my own abilities. Every small success reminded me that I wasn't incapable. I had simply been discouraged for too long. The job helped me build a steady routine. I woke early, checked the day's tasks, oversaw maintenance requests, and made sure guests felt welcome. These responsibilities strengthened me in ways I hadn't expected. They taught me how to trust my judgment again and how to solve problems without doubting myself. The staff slowly warmed up to me too, seeing that I wasn't someone who hid behind excuses. I worked beside them, learning as I went, and the respect they showed me felt genuine. As my confidence grew, I began thinking about something I had pushed aside for years: my mother's old hobby of creating handmade decor. She used to design small pieces using leftover fabric and wood scraps, turning simple materials into warm, comforting items. Remembering her work brought a sense of calm, so one evening, I tried making a few pieces of my own. I shared them with Mara, and she encouraged me to take the idea further. I started a small line, making modest items like wall hangings, table runners, and decorative pieces inspired by my mother's style. Cole helped set up a small space in the lodge lobby where I could display them. Guests noticed quickly, and orders began coming in more steadily than I expected. Within a few months, demand grew enough that I opened an online store. It wasn't a huge business, but it brought in steady income, and every sale reminded me of how far I had come. Cole watched my progress with quiet pride. He never tried to take over or tell me what to do. Instead, he offered support when I needed guidance and stepped back when I wanted space. He became someone I could talk to without fear of being dismissed. Sometimes he'd stay late after lodge hours, sitting with me on the deck while we talked about future plans, mostly mine, since he didn't want me to feel pressured. Although our connection grew warmer, I kept my focus on rebuilding myself. I didn't want emotions to cloud the direction I was heading. I had a goal, and I wasn't willing to lose sight of it. Each day brought a new piece of strength, a clearer mind, and a purpose I hadn't felt in years. Silence, once painful, became my ally. I wasn't rushing or seeking attention. I was preparing, carefully, quietly, for the moment I would step forward on my own terms. RNS Horizons started appearing everywhere, on billboards, in local interviews, and even on small business panels. Ryan stood in front of cameras with a confident smile, talking about growth, vision, and new beginnings. Sienna stayed close beside him, always dressed in sharp outfits, acting like she had earned her place through hard work. Together, they looked polished and successful, and people in town began treating them like rising stars. As their popularity grew, so did the stories they told. In interviews, Ryan slipped in hints about his difficult past and a former partner who couldn't keep up. He never used my name, but he didn't need to. Anyone who knew us could guess who he was talking about. Soon, whispers reached me. Some people said I had been unstable, others said I had ruined his progress. A few even claimed I tried to stop him from starting his business. I heard every rumor, but I refused to defend myself. There was no point arguing with people who only listened to the louder voice. Instead, I stayed focused on my work at the lodge and on the small business I was growing. I let their noise pass over me, choosing silence over pointless battles. I knew the truth, and I knew what I was building. Their rise didn't scare me. It simply reminded me that timing matters, and I wasn't ready to move yet. Whenever Ryan and Sienna appeared on television, I watched calmly. They didn't know I had already uncovered the documents they thought they had buried. They didn't know I was slowly gathering everything I needed. To them, I was irrelevant, someone they had pushed aside without consequences. That belief was the very thing that kept them careless. Cole stood by quietly, offering help without drawing attention. He introduced me to a lawyer he trusted, someone experienced, someone discreet. Together, we went through the financial records again. Every transfer, every forged signature, every hidden transaction was sorted, dated, and filed properly. The lawyer explained the steps we would need to take, the agencies to notify, and the importance of timing. Nothing could be rushed. Every piece had to fit together perfectly. Cole also made sure that all evidence was stored safely, far from anyone who might try to interfere. He didn't push me, but he reminded me often to think clearly and not let anger control my decisions. His steady presence kept me grounded. I wasn't fueled by rage anymore. I was guided by clarity. Meanwhile, RNS Horizons continued expanding. Ryan and Sienna held launch parties, ribbon cuttings, and charity events. Photos of them standing beside expensive cars and high-end developments filled the internet. People praised their success, admiring their confidence and charm. But behind all that brightness, I noticed cracks, tiny inconsistencies in their statements, rushed decisions, deals that looked too perfect. They were growing too fast, ignoring the foundation beneath them. And I knew exactly how weak that foundation was, because they had built parts of it using what they stole. I didn't rush to expose them. I waited. I kept learning, planning, and strengthening my path. Their fame didn't bother me. Their wealth didn't impress me. Everything they displayed was built on a lie, and lies never hold forever. When the time was right, I would step forward with the truth. And when I did, the fall they never imagined would be the one they could never escape. 2 years passed quietly, but each day added something steady to my life. Harbor and Hearth Designs, the little idea I started with a few handmade pieces, had grown into a solid business. Orders came from different towns, and people appreciated the warm, simple style inspired by my mother. With a small team now helping me, I was able to focus on bigger projects. For the first time in a long while, my work felt like a reflection of who I truly was. When the opportunity came to return to Willow Creek, I didn't hesitate. I rented a modest house on the edge of town and used my maiden name for all business dealings. I wanted a clean entry, one without old shadows following me. Most people didn't recognize me anymore. Time had changed me in ways I hadn't noticed. A calmer voice, steadier posture, a confidence that didn't need to be loud. Around the same time, a large development company reached out, requesting a proposal for their new model homes. They wanted decor that felt welcoming yet modern. I didn't know the company's identity at first. My assistant handled the initial communication, and everything seemed straightforward. It was only when the final documents arrived that I noticed the name at the top, R&S Horizons. I stared at the logo for a moment, letting the realization settle. The universe had handed me something I couldn't have planned better myself. Ryan had approved the partnership without knowing who he was dealing with. I didn't react with anger or fear, just a deep, quiet certainty that the path I had chosen was unfolding exactly as it should. We completed the designs with precision and delivered everything on schedule. After that, I requested a final walkthrough meeting to discuss future stages. The staff at their headquarters scheduled it without question. No one recognized my name, and I kept my appearance professional and simple. I didn't want to enter with fanfare. I wanted the moment to reveal itself naturally. The winter afternoon of the meeting arrived cold and still. Snow covered the sidewalks, and the air held the same sharp bite I remembered from the night Ryan threw me out. I walked into the building with calm steps, my portfolio under my arm. The receptionist guided me to Ryan's office. I could hear him speaking confidently inside, unaware of the shift that was about to happen. When the door opened and he looked up, everything in his expression changed at once. His usual practiced charm slipped away. His eyes widened, and the color drained from his face. For a moment, he couldn't even speak. I stepped inside, closing the door gently behind me. "Hello, Ryan," I said, my voice steady and soft. "Miss me?" The room felt suddenly colder, even with the heater humming in the corner. He stared at me as if he were seeing a ghost, someone he tried to erase, standing in front of him stronger than before. I didn't need anger or raised words. My presence was enough. He opened his mouth, searching for something to say, but the silence between us spoke louder than anything he could offer. I wasn't there to argue or explain. I was simply there to let him see the woman he thought he had destroyed, returned, rebuilt, and completely beyond his control. I kept my distance after that first meeting, acting exactly like any other business partner. I spoke politely, kept the conversations short, and never let my emotions show. Ryan tried to read my expressions, but I gave him nothing. Staying calm made him uneasy, and that worked in my favor. He didn't know what I was planning, and the uncertainty slowly chipped away at his confidence. While I appeared focused on work, the real effort was happening quietly in the background. With the help of the lawyer Cole had introduced me to, I organized every piece of evidence we had gathered over the past 2 years. Each document was reviewed carefully: signatures, account movements, authorization forms, and the transfers involving Sienna. We made sure everything was clear and impossible to twist. When the file was complete, we sent it to state investigators, financial regulators, and key investors who had put their trust and money into R&S Horizons. The reaction was almost immediate. Questions began pouring into Ryan's office. Audits were requested. Investors demanded explanations. At first, he tried to brush it off as a misunderstanding, but the paperwork didn't lie. Numbers were mismatched, signatures didn't match records, and assets had been moved without proper approval. The more he tried to cover one issue, the more another problem appeared. Sienna, who had always acted confident beside him, began avoiding public events. Reports came out about irregular entries in their company books. She refused to answer calls from investigators and left her office earlier each day, clearly afraid of what was coming next. Cole stayed with me through every step, not interfering but letting me know I wasn't facing any of this alone. He attended meetings with my lawyer, supported me during interviews with investigators, and reminded me to rest when the pressure became heavy. His presence kept me steady, especially when the situation moved into the courtroom. When the case finally reached the court, Ryan tried to return to his old tactics. He attempted to charm the crowd, claiming he was being targeted unfairly. He talked about betrayal, stress, and jealousy, twisting the story to make himself seem like the victim. But this time, his words didn't hold weight. The evidence was too strong, and people could see through the performance. When I took the stand, I spoke clearly and simply. I didn't add drama or anger. I just explained what happened, step by step. The judge listened closely, and even Ryan's lawyer struggled to interrupt. Ryan avoided my eyes the entire time. At the end of my testimony, he finally looked at me, desperate, confused, still trying to understand how everything slipped from his hands. I met his stare without fear. "You built everything on lies," I said quietly, not raising my voice. "Now let it bury you." He had no response. The courtroom stayed silent. In that moment, the strength I had been building for years settled fully inside me. I wasn't the broken woman he threw out into the cold. I was someone who had faced the truth, rebuilt her life, and held steady until his own actions caught up with him. The trap had closed, and I hadn't needed to force anything. His downfall came from the same deceit he thought he would get away with forever. When the investigations finally ended, I didn't feel triumph, just a quiet release. Everything came out in the open. Every hidden transfer, every forged signature, every deal built on lies. Watching the truth unfold didn't bring excitement. It simply confirmed what I already knew. Ryan had built his entire world by taking from others, and now it was collapsing exactly the way such a world should. His accounts were frozen, his name was dragged through endless reports, and the same people who once praised him now questioned every decision he had ever made. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The facts spoke louder than anything I could have ever told them. Sienna disappeared the moment the auditors pointed at the false documents she created. One day she was smiling on magazine covers, and the next she was gone without a trace. Everyone called it the Horizon Collapse, and hearing that title on the news felt strangely distant, like it belonged to another lifetime. During all of this, I focused on myself and my work. I kept my routine steady, avoiding the noise around me. People expected me to celebrate or make some dramatic statement, but revenge for me wasn't about shouting or proving a point. It was about putting my life back together in a way that no one could tear down again. I was done using my energy on people who tried to control me. Cole stood beside me through everything. Not pushing, not rushing me, just being there. He was the one who told me Ryan's old office building was going into foreclosure. Walking past that place used to make my stomach twist, but now it didn't hold the same weight. It was just a building, emptied out and forgotten. Cole suggested I take a look at it, not for revenge, but for possibility. The first time I stepped inside, the rooms were bare and cold. The space felt nothing like the intimidating office Ryan once used to make himself feel powerful. Walls had marks where pictures used to hang, and the floors were scuffed from movers dragging out furniture. But I saw something else, potential. This place had been used to hurt people financially, and I wanted to turn it into something completely different. With Cole's help, I bought it. Signing the papers felt like closing a door and opening another at the same time. I didn't feel anger. I felt steady, like I was taking control of my story again. I transformed the building into a design studio, not only for my own work, but for women who needed a place to start fresh. Women who had been taken advantage of, talked down to, or stripped of their independence. I wanted them to have a space where they could build something real, something no one could steal. Standing in that finished studio, filled with soft lights and warm colors, I knew I had finally reached the kind of peace I'd been searching for. I didn't win by destroying Ryan. I won by rebuilding myself. Winter came back to Willow Creek the same way it always did, quiet, slow, and sharp. But this time, everything felt different for me. I drove through the streets in my own black SUV, the same kind of car that once stopped for me when I had nothing but fear and a thin coat to keep me warm. Now the wheel was in my hands, and my life was finally mine again. As I passed the old neighborhood, a strange calm settled over me. I didn't feel anger or pain. I just felt steady, like I was closing a chapter that had been open for far too long. I wasn't planning to stop, but something made me slow down when I reached the street where everything had fallen apart years ago. On the sidewalk, I saw him, Ryan. His shoulders were hunched, and his clothes looked worn. The man who once cared more about image than truth now lived in a place that barely held itself together. The confident smile he used to wear was gone. Life had stripped away the shine he borrowed from lies, and what was left was a man who never thought his actions would return to him. He looked up when he heard the sound of my car. His eyes widened, full of recognition and something close to regret. For a moment, neither of us moved. Snowflakes drifted between us, the same kind of cold that once soaked into my skin when I stood outside with nowhere to go. I lowered my window. Not out of pity, not to gloat, just to end things in a way that felt right. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, maybe to ask for something, maybe to explain, maybe to drag me back into the past. But I didn't give him the chance. "You should have known the cold doesn't scare me anymore," I said. My voice was steady, not harsh. It wasn't meant to hurt him. It was simply the truth. I had survived worse than winter. His expression shifted, like he didn't expect me to be this calm, this untouchable. The power he once held over me was gone, and he could see it clearly. There was no guilt left in me, no fear, no leftover hope that he might change. I had outgrown every part of him. I raised the window and drove off without looking back. The road ahead was open and quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I felt light. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I wasn't fighting shadows or old wounds. I was moving forward with a life I had built with my own strength. That moment on the street wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. I finally understood that healing wasn't loud. Sometimes it was just a simple breath on a winter morning and the calm knowledge that I had made it through. I sat on the porch with a warm cup in my hands, watching light snow fall over the lake. The quiet around me felt comforting, almost like the world was finally giving me space to breathe. Cole sat beside me, calm as always, and for the first time in a long while, my thoughts didn't rush toward the past. They stayed right here, in this moment where life felt safe and steady. I realized I wasn't thinking about what I had lost anymore. I was thinking about what I had built. There was a time when I wondered if I would ever feel whole again, but now the peace around me felt real. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simple, like warmth slowly spreading through cold hands. Healing didn't come all at once. It grew piece by piece. Every day I chose to move forward. Ryan didn't sit in my mind the way he used to. I didn't feel anger when his name crossed my memory. I didn't feel sadness either. It was almost like thinking of a story that no longer belonged to me. I didn't hate him. I just didn't give him space in my life anymore. That was the real victory, letting go without feeling the need to look back. Cole glanced at me, reading my silence the way he always did. "You're stronger than the storm that tried to destroy you," he said softly. I took a slow breath, letting those words settle. He wasn't praising me to make me feel better. He was saying it because it was true. I survived nights when I felt empty and cold. I survived betrayal that tried to break my trust in myself. And I survived the fear that told me I had nowhere to go. Every step I took away from that pain brought me here, to a home filled with calm, to work that gave me purpose, to people who actually cared. Looking at the lake, I understood something clearly. My life now was the answer to everything that once hurt me. I didn't need revenge in the way people imagine it. My growth was enough. My stability was enough. My peace was enough. I wasn't defined by what happened to me. I was defined by how I rose after it. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away and building my own peace, or should I have given him another chance? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your opinion. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a new video.